Welcome to If You Don't Plan, You Are Stupid.
Welcome to If You Don't Plan, You Are Stupid with estate planning attorney Andrew Rosenberg. We're here to cut through the confusion, crush the myths, and show you why planning for your future is the smartest move you'll ever make. Whether you're 25 or 85, if you have a family, a house, or just a life you care about, it's time to get serious. Let's make sure you protect what matters before it's too late. I'm your host, John Clements, and today's episode is Why You Need an Estate Plan. It's not just for old people. So first of all, Andy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, John. It's good to be here. And this is our first ever episode of If You Don't Plan, You're Stupid.
Yes, it's the inaugural episode, and I'm sure the question that's burning in everyone's mind, because it's burning in my mind too, is why did you choose the title, If You Don't Plan, You're Stupid? How did that come about?
Number one, it's catchy. That's the one thing I've noticed. But I'll tell you kind of how it happened. So I've been using this for several years now, and I was in a networking group. And one of the requirements of a networking group is when you do your 30-second elevator speech, you got to have some sort of a tagline. And I couldn't ever think of something. And I was talking about a will or something like that. And then at the end, I just came up with this phrase. I'm like, if you don't plan, you're stupid. And everybody couldn't believe I said it. And then everyone else after me in the networking group started saying the same thing. I'm like, well, I guess it's a pretty good tagline. So I've been doing it ever since. And when I shoot videos, for my website or whatever, I try and at the end, I usually say something like that. I'm actually finishing up a book, my first book, and it's going to be titled, guess what, John? If You Don't Plan, You're Stupid. And now we have the podcast. So there you go. And believe it or not, I'm actually in the middle of trademarking it.
Oh, okay. So I'll try not to say it too many times then, because I don't want to, get a bill in the mail.
No. No, but it's catchy enough that everyone say I should try and trademark it. So we're in the process of doing it.
Oh, awesome, man! That's really cool. That's really cool to have a podcast and a book coming out, and just other. That's really kind of a cool thing, man. So thanks for sharing that. And so you're an expert with estate planning. So what's the biggest myth about estate planning that you see and you wish more people understood the truth about?
I do a lot of workshops, live workshops. Over the past year, I've done a lot of them, about every 2 weeks. And so I'm seeing repetition during the workshops. And I think, this is just me, obviously, you got a gazillion attorneys out there, so everyone's going to come up with a different opinion. But I think the biggest myth out there is that people think that if they have a will, they're taken care of. They think that they're fine. And they're not. And that's the problem. And here's why. So what happens is people think, and I don't want to get too legalese here, John, but
yeah,
when someone passes away and they have a will, people think it's like the movies, unfortunately. And the movies portray it as follows. And tell me if you've seen this. Obviously, someone passes away, they're in a conference room with the attorney, and all the beneficiaries are there. And the attorney sits there and reads the will, and then it goes right to the credits at the end. I just saw a repeat of a movie. It was a Clint Eastwood movie. I forget the name, Gran Torino. And at the end of that movie, literally he gets killed. Sorry, spoiler alert. He gets killed. And the ending is in an attorney's office, and they're reading the will, and then it just kind of goes, and that's the end of it. That's the movies, guys. That's not real life. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, at least in Florida. So that's what I think is the biggest misconception. And here's what happens. So when you pass away with a will, the legal term for that is called dying testate. Dying testate. And if you died with nothing in place, which is another fiasco, by the way, that's called dying intestate. So there's two different things. So dying without anything, it's called dying intestate. Dying with a will is called dying testate. And here's what I want to explain to you. When you have a will and you pass away and you have assets in your name. So let's say I own a house, which I do with my wife, but let's just say it happened to be in my name alone. There's no beneficiaries or anything. It's just in my name. And I were to drop dead, God forbid, and I have a will. That's all I got. It doesn't just go automatically to whoever it is in the will, unfortunately. What happens, at least in Florida, here's what happens. We will have to go through all the problems of probate, which we can talk about, but all the hassles, delays, expenses of probate court. And then at the end, we look at the will and the judge says, where's the asset go? And we look at the will and the will tells us where it goes. So that's a huge misunderstanding or misconception out there. People think that if they have less than a certain amount of money less than, when I started out was $600,000 was this federal estate tax. Now it's 14 million basic. So people think if they have less than a certain amount of money and they have a will, that they're fine and that it just goes. And again, that's completely false. And so that's called dying testate, dying with a will. And so you're going to go through the probate process. But here's the other issue. The same scenario, John, I pass away. I don't have anything in place. And I said what I just told you, that's called dying intestate.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what happens? We still got to go through the same process called probate court. So I'm going to go through all the hassles, delays, expenses of probate. And then at the end, the judge is going to say, where's the asset go? And the only difference between having a will and not having a will is with a will, we look at the will and it tells us where to go. If we don't have a will, we look at the Florida statute and that tells us how it gets distributed. Either way, you're going through the courts. So again, the biggest misconception out there, they have a will and they say everything's fine and you're not.
Oh, that's super interesting because I 100% believe that misconception until about 3 minutes ago. I'm sure the people who are listening probably in the same boat, like, wow, I had no idea.
I know.
So
I know.
you've got to have some good stories. So what's an example of like a real life disaster you've seen happen because they didn't plan ahead?
Yeah, unfortunately, I see this more than you want to know. Let's see. I had one. I'll give you a couple. I had a scenario where a daughter came in. Okay. It was probably 3 months ago. Daughter came in, met with me. She wanted to do an estate plan. It's fine. We did all that. And then she was telling me about her mom, who's a widow, and she passed away. And what happened was when she passed away, the widow had three siblings or three kids. So my client was one daughter, and then there was another daughter and a son. So there's three of them. And she had about $1.5 million of total assets, which was a nice size situation, obviously, with the house and investments, everything else. And then the daughter starts telling me that it's supposed to be split a third equally. That's how the will was set up. And the daughter lived down in Florida, down here with her mom, the widow. And to make life easier, the mom put the daughter on the bank account with her so that she could help write the bills and do all the things, which I see all the time. It happens all the time. But what happened was mom dies, and the bank accounts that she had with the daughter totaled about 600,000 of the 1.5 million. And at that point, the daughter basically said, I'm keeping those bank accounts because they're in my name, and I'm not going to distribute it to my siblings at all. And legally, she had the right to do that because she was on the bank accounts with her mom. So she basically said, up yours to the siblings.
Yeah.
And now the client of mine gets the 600,000, and now there's about $800,000 of other assets that's going to go through probate court and everything else, like we just discussed, and it's going to go a third. So a disaster here is twofold. Number one, the mom who died wanted it to go a third to the three kids, and the way she did it was wrong because she put her daughter on the bank accounts, and then the daughter did something that was not probably what mom wanted. And the daughter said, I'm going to keep it, and I'm not going to give any of the money to those siblings because it's mine and I don't get along. So two things happened that were disasters. And the third thing that happened was now the client of mine, who's the daughter, has no relationship whatsoever with the other siblings. Because you know what, John? Money does funny things when they get it. So things happen when people get money in their hands. And so that's a real life situation that happened recently, where the mom wanted to go a third. She did everything she thought appropriately to take care of it. And she didn't meet with an attorney to talk about the ramifications of putting a daughter on an account. And then the daughter said, F you to the other siblings, I'm keeping it. And she's keeping the 600,000 and she's going to get a third of the 800 as well. So that gives you a quick example of a simple situation that became a disaster.
Yeah, and I'm not at all surprised that story ended with, and now the siblings don't talk to each other and don't get along. Like, I saw that coming from a mile away, which is just so unfortunate. Not something you want to be on.
Listen, I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and it's not the dollar amount. You'd be amazed at how many family fights I see over a very small amount of money. When I talk about small amount, less than $1,000 type situation.
Wow.
Breaking up families. or it's over something stupid like a teddy bear or something like that, and a whole family feud happened. So it's crazy. But I want to tell you another story, if that's okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So let me tell you a story about a situation where it worked out right. Because you asked me what disasters. Let's talk about a story that works out right.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So there's this guy that's a swimmer, okay? Competitive swimmer. I don't know if you know anything about swimming. There's what's called master swim team, where you join as an older person and you work out with the swim team and all that good stuff. And the masters, they were having a practice early morning, and it's usually about 20, 30 people, and everyone knows everyone. They don't know their first names. They don't know what everyone does. You know, you talk amongst yourself. This swimmer was the scenario. The swimmer went to practice, didn't feel right for the first couple minutes in practice, pulled himself out of the water, thought he was having like a low blood sugar attack or something, told his coach, say, hey, listen, can you get me some orange juice or apple juice? And then went to the side of the pool and sat in a chair. Lo and behold, one of the swimmers that was sharing the lane with this guy comes out and starts talking to the guy. And he says, hey, my name's Chris, and he knows him. And he says, yeah, hey, what's up, Chris? And he tells him, what's going on? I don't feel right, blah, blah, blah. And Chris says, why don't you lay down on the pool deck? So the guy lays down on the pool deck and he starts talking to Chris. And Chris ends up being a cardiologist. And it turns out that the guy was having a heart attack. And Chris was there, and Chris called the ambulance. They took him to the hospital, and he ended up being okay. However, the guy was in the ER at the hospital, getting ready to deal with this massive heart attack situation, and the guy was calm as could be. His wife was there. One of his kids showed up. The swim coach came, met him, and everyone's panicked. And the guy was completely calm. And I found out, why he was so calm? Because he had everything in place. And he knew, and he told his wife, listen, if I should die today, I have my trust, I have my will, I have all this stuff set up. Here's all you have all the information for all the usernames and passwords. Everything's set up perfectly fine. Turns out the guy ended up being okay, but he had a massive, you ever heard of a widowmaker?
I have, yeah.
So he had 100% block of the widowmaker, which you do not survive. My daughter, who just graduated from nurse practitioner school, her last class was on heart attacks at the University of Miami graduate school and nurse practitioner. And they started to talk about the widowmaker. And she raised her hand and she asked the professor, who was a doctor, said, what are the odds of survival for that heart attack? And she explained what he had. And the professor said, 99.4% chance of non-survival. And then the doctor said, tell me more, and he explained the whole situation. It turns out the only reason the guy survived was because he was a swimmer, and he was so bad at swimming that in order to keep up with all his swim mates in the master's class, he had to swim that much harder over the years. Because of that, his body needed more oxygen to work hard, and his body created collateral arteries around the heart, and when he had the massive heart attack, he actually had his own bypass system, and he survived. The moral of the story is that he was calm in the matter of crisis mode because he knew he had everything in place. So that's a situation where things were organized and working right, where the first example was where a disaster happened. And I'll tell you one more thing about that second story. That second story was me.
Really?
I had a heart
attack. Coming.
I had a heart attack at 48 years old, a massive heart attack. And I was calm, cool, and collected. I wasn't worried because I knew if it was my time, it was my time. And I knew I had all my estate planning ducks in a row and all my financial things in a row. And I told my wife, hey, if it doesn't happen and I don't survive, you'll be fine. And she shook me. She literally shook me and said, I'm not ready for you to die. We have 2 young kids. I need you to survive until they're done, and then you can kick the bucket. So I'm now 9 years later. June 22nd of this year will be 9 years later. I'm almost 50. I'm 57, almost 58. And they're now old enough where she told me in bed one day, she said, you can kick the bucket if God forbid it's your time now.
I've been married a long time, and I'm resonating with you. I'm tracking with the whole conversation.
But that's a true story. And
that's amazing.
And it can happen to anybody. I got one more story. I don't know if I'm boring you, John. Is this okay if
No,
I
go
tell
for
another
it.
story?
Yeah, let's make it a quick one. Yeah, we'll end on this maybe.
Okay. So I had a gentleman that used to work in my landscaping guy. He called me on the phone, left a message saying, "Hey, Andy, I know you do wills, trust, estate planning. I want to meet with you." Called him back that night, left a message, didn't hear from him. Called him back again the next day, left a message, didn't hear from him. Called him back the following day. His wife picked up. He ended up dropping dead of a heart attack between when he called me and when he tried to schedule an appointment. He did not have any estate plan in place. He was 52 years old, 2 young kids. They had nothing in place, and it's a disaster right now for the family. And I play that voicemail almost every time in my workshop and point to the crowd and tell them, don't let that happen to you. Don't procrastinate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing to me. I'm interested in your book now, right? 'Cause I'm sure there's going to be some amazing stories. Also, so glad that you're still alive. That's important too.
Me
So
too.
you're coming at this, yeah, from a legal standpoint and also from a standpoint of someone who's been through it, which is just amazing. So in future episodes of this podcast, what kind of topics and real world advice can listeners expect to hear from you?
So we're going to talk about a lot of things, okay? So I talk about healthcare surrogates and living wills and do not resuscitate orders. We're going to talk about Medicaid planning. How does that work? We're going to talk about powers of attorney, all the different types of powers of attorney out there. We're going to talk about if you have a blended family, what happens there and how do you plan for that? What happens if you're in the LGBTQ plus community? How do you plan for those things? What about if you have pets, pet trusts? What about if you have guns? We're going to talk about an episode probably about gun trusts. These are just some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. And then if there's anyone else that has questions, they let us know so I can start talking about it on different podcasts.
Awesome. Yeah, I think all those are going to be super fascinating, interesting, valuable. So again, Andy, we're just going to wrap up this first episode. Thank you for coming on today.
Hey, thanks, John, for hosting. I appreciate it. Look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on If You Don't Plan, You Are Stupid. If today's episode made you think twice about putting it off, good. That's the point. If you're ready to take action, visit rosenberglawfirm.net to start building your estate plan today. And don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a reminder that your future is too important to leave for chance. And with that, hope you have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.